Our guest on This is America and the World is retired United States Air Force four-star General Michael Hayden. General Hayden formerly served as Director of the National Security Agency, Director of the Central Intelligence Agency, and Principal Deputy Director of National Intelligence. Currently, General Hayden is a principal at the Chertoff Group and is the author of the new book, The Assault on Intelligence: American National Security in an Age of Lies. General, good to see you once again.
Thanks, Dennis.
Singapore Summit. You got to weigh in. I know you have been.
Better than a lot of other options. You know, I think in terms of off-ramps from the crisis that both we and the North Koreans created last summer and fall, I mean, it really did look like we were on a path to some sort of conflict. And this is far better than that. All right, and I give the administration credit for backing off a bit from those absolutist win-lose, zero-sum demands that they had in the first place. I credit Secretary Pompeo with helping that. He came out of that meeting in New York with Kim Yong-chol, the former Intel chief, and talked about beginnings and process and step-by-step. And the president picked that up as well. So we had an event in Singapore that met my expectations. I had modest expectations. It would take place, none of the wheels would fly off. It would set a good atmosphere, and everyone knew we still had a lot of work to do. So that happened. So that's good. Check, 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 check. The bad is that so far, I mean, if we stop the clock right now and check the scoreboard, the North Koreans are way ahead on points.
How so?
Number one, they get equivalency with the President of the United States. All right? I mean, and that's been the goal. And I've served in Korea, and I've negotiated with the North Koreans. And although I couldn't deliver a president, they always wanted to talk to me and exclude the South Koreans and others. They want that bilateral relationship with the United States, and we gave it to him. Those images, the words of the president, tough, talented, it's an honor to meet you. That's going to be a gift that keeps on giving for Kim Jong-un. Now, and we kind of sweetened the pot by the president, I think, keep taking the South Koreans and our own armed forces by surprise and saying we're going to stop our exercise program in South Korea. That is a big deal.
No more war games.
Well, you know, that's his word, and that's a horrible word. And those are defensive exercises. We actually have a fairly light footprint in Korea. It's about 28,000. It's an Army brigade and an Air Force wing plus. All right, that's not enough to defend the peninsula. We defend it by flowing forces. The exercises that the president appears to have canceled, they're all about the flowing of forces and how we get there and we get comfortable with integrating with both the American and the ROK, the Republic of Korea forces, as they go forward. You stop doing that long enough, you lose your edge.
Interesting if something had happened or might happen on the peninsula, that the United States has the command of the South Korean forces.
It does. No, that's been a point of contention with some South Korean governments wanting to take control of what's called CFC, the Combined Forces Command, and others saying, well, maybe that's not such a good idea. Let's let the Americans stay in charge. So when I served there on my last tour, I was in a Combined Forces headquarters. I had Korean and American officers. In wartime, during one of those exercises, right, I would deploy from Seoul to Daegu in the south, and I would actually become the deputy for a ROK, Republic of Korea, 3-star, who was responsible for the security of the rear area in the Republic of Korea. And I would go, and I'd go into the tunnel, into the bunker, into the cave, really, where we had our command post, and we'd fight, that word in quotes, the war, for 4 or 5 days.
Wow.
And so I was subordinate to a Korean general.
Who was the genius in this Singapore summit?
So, I mean, the major plot line here in the United States is that our tough actions, the diplomatic isolation, our amping up the pressure on the Chinese, the economic sanctions, the military demonstrations, all of that amped up the pressure on the North Koreans that forced Kim Jong-un to go to Singapore and meet with President Trump.
So you're going to give President Trump high marks?
Well, that's our major plot line. There's another plot line.
Okay.
All right. That during that same time period, the Chairman Kim, sprinted to a nuclear arsenal and missiles to deliver them to North America, which then changes the narrative to which of the two needed the summit more. Which of the two needed to get off the status quo more? And you can make a reasonable case that this is at least a jump ball. I mean, you can argue the case that it was Kim who drove the Americans to press for the summit rather than the other way around.
In your book, The Assault on Intelligence, you use a phrase, intelligence leadership profile.
Yeah.
So you say that the intelligence community gathers and puts together a profile. What profile did Kim have on Trump? What profile did Trump have on Kim?
So we spent a lot of energy trying to develop these character profiles of leaders. I mean, you fundamentally you begin with whatever secrets you have, but then you enrich it with publicly available information. You turn it over to experts, people who understand emotions, how the human mind works, how character is developed, and you begin to develop what makes this person tick. It's hard work, and it's hard to get into the soul, into the psyche of someone. What I say in the book is our president gives that away free. All right, we get his
through his Twitter,
through his Twitter account,
which you call digital trash talk.
Yeah,
a lot of it.
Yes, a lot of digital trash talk, but it's also his unfiltered id being pushed out there for any security service in the world to observe. Look, you're going to find out what sets him off, what angers him, what pleases him. You can even discern quite easily his sleep patterns.
So Kim knew all of that.
Of course he did. Of course he did.
And I gather from people who have sat down with Kim, he is very bright, very well informed.
I get that impression.
And knew what he was getting himself into.
Yeah, he's a very young man. He went to school in Switzerland.
Yes.
And so he's probably got a bit more exposure to the broader world than his father or his grandfather.
Right. So Trump is known to the Koreans. What is Trump taking about Kim into the equation?
So I think what my old tribe would be telling him, and frankly here I'm referring to Dan Coates, who's actually said this publicly, the Director of National Intelligence, former senator. Director Coates has said that from the North Korean point of view, the continued possession of nuclear weapons is absolutely essential to regime survival.
Say that again.
Yeah, the continued possession of nuclear weapons is absolutely essential to regime survival.
So they're not going to give it up?
No.
They will not give it up?
No. I mean, Dennis, there's nobody of my background that I know of who says they're going to give up their weapons. Now, look, you want to imagine this long arc of history, a radically altered security situation in Northeast Asia. Okay, maybe. But let me give you a precondition, okay? North Korea, as we know it, will never give up their weapons.
That's it?
Yeah.
So where does that leave the United States? Where does that leave the president and other players in the neighborhood? Republic of Korea, Japan, China, Russia?
So it kind of returns to the theme of the book. How much is objective reality a departure point for American thinking and American actions anymore? All right? And look, people in intelligence know there are a lot of other legitimate stimuli to presidential decision making, and they're quite legitimate. But the role of intelligence is broadly to set the left and the right hand boundaries of possible, logical, doable policy discussion. All right. Now, if you reject those boundaries, you end up working over here, where success is not only not guaranteed, in fact, it's never going to happen. So what I hope the president was able to embrace, that this complete, total, irreversible, verifiable denuclearization thing is something that happens way late in the game, not early. And as I suggested earlier, I give Secretary of State Pompeo some credit for kind of acting that way, knowing he couldn't go in there and pound the table. Look, you look at the language 6 months ago, and it was they get nothing until they give them up.
Yep.
And we're certainly not there.
Not there at all. General Michael Hayden, former director of the National Security Agency, former director of the CIA. This is a wonderful book, The Assault on Intelligence, just a brilliant look at what is going on in America right now. Sit tight. This is America and the World. This is America and the World is brought to you by Whittle School and Studios, the U.S.-China Education Trust and F.Y. Chang Foundation, guided by Julia Chang Block, President, the League of Arab States, the Republic of Haiti, the Rotendaro Family Trust, Japan, History, Hospitality, and Advanced Technology, sharing tomorrow. The Forerunner Foundation, dedicated to forward-thinking public policy. And the Embassy Series, uniting people through musical diplomacy, presenting international artists in diplomatic settings. General, let's talk about intelligence.
Yeah.
What is
Right.
versus an administration, and all administrations, what they'd like it to be.
Sure.
How relevant is intelligence now with a president who says, I'm the only one who matters?
Yeah. So, look, we have to accommodate to every president. All presidents learn in different ways. All have different priorities, different principles. So we're accustomed to accommodating. But this is a far heavier than average lift with President Trump. Michael Gerson writes for the Washington Post, used to be 43's speechwriter. Michael says that President Trump lives in the eternal now. For his decision making, there is no relevant history, and frankly, he's disinterested in distant consequences. It's all present tense. It's transactional rather than strategic, and it seems to come out of him sui generis from some instincts that he might have, some pre-existing narrative as to how the world works. But it's not based on a commonly accepted view of objective reality. So I talked to a lot of people who briefed presidents in the book, and a couple of really interesting exchanges. Number one about us, all right? We try to present truth. We get it wrong, all right? Okay, I was there for the Iraq weapons of mass destruction estimate, all right? But we were still wrong, but we were still trying to pursue truth. So the president's briefers confided to me that, look, we've had presidents in the past who have disagreed with us, and we argue with them over what objective truth really is. We've had presidents who frankly lie, who know objective truth, but act as if it was not true. He said, that's not the case with President Trump. This is a president for whom objective truth is not routinely the departure point for what he wants to say or do. A couple of examples. Barack Obama wiretapped Trump Tower. Now, everyone in his administration, every intelligence officer that he's appointed simply says that's not true. But he acts as if it were true. Syrian refugees are an apocalyptic threat to the United States, and our methodology for vetting them is absolutely dystopian. Not true. But he acts as if it were true. And so you've got these instinctive departures, and now the fact-based guys, the data Sherpas, want to come in and delay, defer, perhaps make more complex the decision that the president thinks is instinctively obvious. And therein lies the tension between the intelligence world and the president. Now, Dennis, let me broaden this a little bit. I mean, it's fair to say the administration has had an awful lot of friction with elements of American society. The most prominent elements where we've seen friction have been intelligence, law enforcement, and the courts, science, scholarship, and journalism. And what do those six have in common? They're all based on data. Now, any of them can be wrong. Occasionally, some of them are corrupt. But fundamentally, their only safe haven is Fact.
Yeah.
And those are the high friction points.
Yeah.
Those are the institutions when they hit the president, we see sparks fly.
So if you ignore those, if you ignore the facts,
Yeah.
so where are we in a kind of a post-truth world?
Okay.
Where are we? Where does intelligence fit in? And what happens to all of us as citizens when we don't know what's true anymore?
So here's what I try to explain in the book. And you and I have already talked a lot about the president, and I talk a lot about the president in the book. But I really try to make the point that the president is not cause of this. He is effect. And
He's a
effect of this.
Effect of this.
Yes. All right.
Are you saying a train started 20 years ago?
Well,
or?
let me try to metaphorically create a cake in front of us, all right? And the basic layer of the cake, the biggest layer, all right, the base layer, is American society, which has drifted over the past number of years into what the Oxford Dictionary calls a post-truth culture. Post-truth, defined by the dictionary, as decision-making based less on fact and data and evidence, and more on feeling, preference, emotion, tribe, loyalty, grievance.
Let me just jump in and say that you say someplace in the book, President ran on attitude and not policy.
Exactly right. Right. So you've got this reality down here, all right?
Got it,
and we can spin that out, and I do it in the book. I went to Pittsburgh. I asked my brother.
I wanted to ask you about it.
I asked my brother to fill the back end of a sports bar with a bunch of Trump supporters.
Okay.
And I sat there for 2.5 hours. I grew up with all these people. Some were relatives, boyhood friends, and they believe in the president, but it's instinctive.
What did you learn sitting with that group of people in that sports bar in Pittsburgh about why they believed in the president and why they elected the president?
So their feelings were genuine. Their feelings were legitimate.
Good people.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. They go to church, they send their kids to school, they work, they pay their taxes, they obey the law. And by the way, they fight the nation's wars too. More veterans proportionally in that room than any boardroom or green room I've ever been in. Okay? So really good people. Now there's a whole bunch of other things going on. The winds of globalization, for example, being at my back for the last 50 years, but in their face. And they feel disenfranchised. I asked the group, what does America first mean to you? And the answer was, somebody's paying attention to me. All right? So you've got that whole dissatisfaction layer.
So they're American or America-oriented. You're an internationalist.
Actually, that's true.
Yeah?
Yeah.
They are focused on family, education, patch of grass.
Exactly. But on a dark day, not these people, but those tendencies tend towards exclusion, distrust of the unknown, nativism, opposition to immigration, and a whole bunch of things. Look, I get to it later in the book.
So did you? Your background is Republican, right?
Actually, I'm not registered. I'm a Clinton appointee to NSA and a Bush appointee to CIA.
Okay, I'm going to put that off on the side. Good dodge, and rightly so. Did you see it coming? Did you see the president's election coming?
No, I did not, and because
I guess it was a surprise to everybody.
Yeah, particularly for people like
but
me.
Why did those people in that sports bar hate Hillary so much?
And by the way,
hate is the word.
That's why they voted for Donald Trump. It wasn't so much leaning towards him; it was a rejection of her,
and
it was visceral. Well, okay, so we're back in this post-truth band. We've got people who feel disenfranchised. We have people who feel ignored. We have feeding them a source of news via social media rather than the curated product of the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, or the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And I go through this in the book. The nature of social media is to confirm your going-in prejudices. And the longer you stay on social media, the algorithm drives you into the darker corners of your own self-imposed ghetto. All right? And so
we're tribes now.
Yes, exactly right. So you've got that layer, all right, which is the most important layer and is the only one that it's the one that we have to fix in order to make this better. But the second layer was a candidate who recognized the first layer and brilliantly exploited it. And a now president who not just exploits it, but worsens it by a lot of what he does, but really a whole bunch of what he says. He appeals to the fact-based. I'll give you an example. Remember, I mentioned about Barack Obama and Trump Tower, right? John Dickerson's interviewing the president 6 months into the administration or so. It's one-on-one. It's like you and me, except they're in the Oval, but they're across from one another. And then Dickerson gets to the Trump Tower. Why do you think so? What evidence do you have? President doesn't want to talk about it. President gets up, clearly signaling by body language, this is over. Dickerson's not taking it. President walks, sits behind the Resolute desk, begins to look at some paper, really signaling this is over, and Dickerson's still stalking him. What evidence do you have, Mr. President? What proof do you have? And the president responds, Dennis, a lot of people agree with me. A lot of people were saying, that is the essence of a post-truth world and the essence of the president's relationship with many people in this lower level of the cake, this base. If I can make it popular, if I can make it trending, that's sufficient. That's truth. That's the departure point.
We go in a different direction for the last few minutes that we have together. You're going to graduation today.
Yeah.
Is it your
granddaughter?
Granddaughter.
From high school, yeah.
So, let me ask you this question, and you can think for a second, okay? What do you think is the single greatest lesson that you've learned in your life so far?
Well, since we've been talking about the book, since my life has been consumed by writing the book, it's this pursuit of truth, which I think leads to better human behavior, more understanding. You know, as an intelligence officer, you work with adversaries, right? It's rare that a good intelligence officer who really knows his stuff actually genuinely hates the adversary. There's humanity in everyone, and the more you know, the more you see the humanity and the complexity of life. You still do your duty, all right? I'm involved. I was involved in targeting decisions, for heaven's sake, as director of some agencies. But you do get a better understanding of humanity.
So what does truth mean to you on a personal level right now?
So actually,
what do you pass along to her? What do you pass along to her?
Well, actually, she's a really bright young lady, Russian by birth, born in Sverdlovsk, Yekaterinburg now, all right? She was adopted by our daughter and our son-in-law about age 1. And there's an example of what it is I'm trying to describe about a world that should be more tolerant, more inclusive, more accepting, and so on. She is genuinely our granddaughter, no different than any of our other 5 grandchildren. Dennis, back here in the base layer, and then you've got the president manipulating. I need to act quickly. There's a third layer, and that's the Russians. But really, they're the last 15 or 20%. The base problem, the base 80%, 85%, is us. And there's a debate down here in the base level. I think it's really important, and I want to share. I describe in the book that America has always identified itself, certainly in its good moments, as a creedal nation. That we are identified. We take our existence out of belief in certain principles. They're the principles of the Enlightenment. Those guys who wrote the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Declaration were all Enlightenment scholars.
Values.
Yes, and by the way, values based upon the pursuit of truth. That's the essence of the Enlightenment. And so if we're moving into a post-truth world, that's bad for all children of the Enlightenment, but it's really bad for us because our identity is wrapped up in Enlightenment values. And the debate that's going on, Dennis, it really kind of captures everything I'm trying to say is we are re-examining what it means to be an American. And there's a move afoot that defines Americanness by blood, soil, and shared history rather than a belief in certain ideals. The normal way to become an American is you read the document, you understand the document, you swear to the document, you're in. And it doesn't, much else doesn't matter. And we are moving in the direction of something else that challenges the core of us as a people, and it's tied to the question of truth.
Because truth is becoming less relevant now.
In decision-making and in action.
I often, when we travel around the world, ask people, what's at the heart of your culture in this particular country? So here in the United States, the question at what's at the heart of our culture the fabric is unraveling right before our very eyes.
The fabric is comprised of our ideals.
Yeah.
Our identity comes from the ideals, and so when we threaten the ideals, it's the very structure, the very fundament of national identity. I've got a lot of friends from around the world. We go to American sports events. They're a little surprised we play the anthem before every sports event. That doesn't happen everywhere else in the world. And I simply say, because this is a big country made up of many different groups, we need that ceremonial reminder of the ideals of the Republic to keep that bond strong.
Michael Hayden, The Assault on Intelligence, American National Security in an Age of Lies. Thank you, General.
Thank you.
Good to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
For information about This Is America and the World, and to watch all of our programs, visit our website, thisisamerica.net, and look for us on Facebook and Twitter. You can listen to all of our ambassador interviews on our podcast, The Ambassador Series. It's available on our website and iTunes. This Is America and the World is brought to you by Whittle School and Studios, the U.S.-China Education Trust and F.Y. Chang Foundation, guided by Julia Chang Block, President, the League of Arab States, the Republic of Haiti, the Rotendaro Family Trust, Japan, History, Hospitality, and Advanced Technology, sharing tomorrow. The Forerunner Foundation, dedicated to forward-thinking public policy. And the Embassy Series, uniting people through musical diplomacy, presenting international artists in diplomatic settings.